So Tom, as you know, we produced this study that showed all of these inefficiencies that just happen in the construction process. One of the metrics that we captured was the utilization of available work fronts. How much of the area that is available is actually being worked on. In this aspect, your project was, well, number one from our projects, 64 projects worldwide. Specifically to that, how did you go about managing that? How do you go about making sure that as much of the area that is possible is being worked on?
We did the normal benchmarking within the first unit to make sure everyone understood their sequence and the way in which we expected them to work, how long it was going to take, and specifically those interfaces, working all of that through early doors. And then moving on from there, it was more around driving the mindset of something needs to be happening in every unit every day or every week. And I think what the supply chain came to understand was that if they weren't delivering on time within the 5 units that they were doing, that would have a knock-on impact to them later down the line, because the following trays would be delayed and so on.
So you're sitting again in that weekly meeting, and one of your goals is, as you say, in every unit somebody or something has to be done this week. How are you specifically in that planning session thinking about that, and how does Buildots come into play with that?
Yeah, so I think traditionally, before those meetings, one of our team would have walked their areas. They would have done a markup on a paper matrix to demonstrate exactly where we were progress-wise against our plan. What had happened in each unit within that time period, so that when we came and sat down in that meeting, we'd have an up-to-date picture. Now, the problem with that is it's extremely time-consuming, and it's fairly subjective because different people see different things. I think the beauty of utilising Buildots was that no one can argue. The captures were done the day before we'd have the meetings, so I knew that the data was up to date. We could then sit in the meeting forum, we could pull it up on the screen, and if someone wanted to tell me that something was done that I knew hadn't been done, it shows you the exact progress and when the photo was taken, and it takes that argument away from it. No one can hide, and I think what that means is that everyone has to play with a straight bat. You've got to be truthful. You can't hide, you can't mix the truth, and once the supply chain see that, they very quickly sort of came to the table with that approach.
Amazing. Another important metric, I believe, is what we call the output consistency of subcontractors, of trade contractors. In your mind, sort of the consistency of this output, just making sure that the same amount of work, roughly, is done every week, versus having one week that is very productive and the next that is less. What does that do to the construction process and sequence?
Yeah, I mean, the only way you're ever going to deliver against your program is if you have a consistent output. If your output or your productivity is going up and down, it makes it so hard to plan, because you'll be sat in the collaborative planning meeting one week trying to forecast where you're going to be next week. If that week your productivity is 80%, that allows you to plan. But if the next week you're dropping down to 40%, then you're in trouble.
So interestingly enough, what you're saying is that consistency or continuity of work, say, at one point, actually drives that continuity of work at the next point, and it's sort of call it a positive snowball.
Exactly, yeah.
Amazing. So on that, finally, where does, from your experience, this data come in to enable that? How, if at all, does the data help to make sure that we're consistent in our output?
I think fundamentally what it does is it gives you up-to-date, real-life information that can be shared with your supply chain, and can unlock any blockers along the way. And I think what that allows the project team and the supply chain to do is to really understand the importance of that consistency and understand where they're falling behind or where they need to focus. listen, like any job, you're always going to have areas that don't work or supply chain that don't come on a journey with you. But if you can engage with the majority of your supply chain and get them on board and make them understand that, you know, okay, this week we weren't as productive, next week we need to really focus on delivering X, Y, and Z, as well as catching up there, in order to unlock the sequence and allow all of the other trades to come through, because that's going to help them and essentially earn them more money because they're being more efficient, then I think it can only be a good thing.
Amazing. Tom, thank you very much for the conversation.
No problem.